Whenever we hear the word economics, our minds almost instantly jump to what? Stock tickers, right? Quarterly earnings, profit margins. Basically, we picture charts pointing up and to the right. But what if we completely flipped the script on that? What if an entire economic system was built not on wealth extraction, but on human fairness? Just imagine an economy where the baseline measure of success isn't how much money was made, but how much human dignity was preserved.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the economic philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, while he's known globally as a massive political and spiritual leader, Gandhi actually engineered a highly structured, totally radical economic paradigm. It was deeply rooted in Indian traditions and this core commitment to simple living, and it was specifically designed to empower everyday people rather than elite institutions. Essentially, we're looking at a system built for the village, not Wall Street.
So, to make sure we grasp all of this, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll dive into the economics of humanity. Then, we'll look at simplicity and manual labor. Third, self-reliance and village power. After that, we'll tackle the idea of wealth as a trust. And finally, wrap up with its relevance in today's world.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Economics of Humanity.
Okay, so standard economics is essentially this giant machine, right? And it's driven by two main engines, profit and consumption. It operates mostly as a numbers game. Efficiency and maximizing returns are the ultimate goals. Well, Gandhian economics completely swaps out those engines. Instead, it runs on morality, ethics, and fairness. Gandhi firmly believed that any economic framework that, divorced itself from ethical considerations was inherently flawed, even dangerous. He argued that an economic exchange isn't just some mathematical transaction between two anonymous wallets. It's a deeply human interaction, and it has to be governed by an ethical code. Basically, if a business deal creates profit but totally crushes a community, under this philosophy, that is a complete failure.
And this brings us to a concept that honestly challenges the very core of modern society, limiting our wants. Think about a modern world. We are bombarded every single day by the message that happiness requires upgrading. It's the targeted ads telling you to buy the newest phone, get the bigger house, wear the trendier clothes. Well, Gandhi called this out as a psychological and economic trap. Endless consumption doesn't actually lead to fulfillment, it just leads to a hamster wheel of anxiety. True freedom and stability, he argued, actually come from deliberately limiting our wants. By choosing to stop endlessly chasing material goods, we free ourselves from that exhausting cycle. It's a complete rewiring of how we define personal and societal success.
Moving on to Section 2, Simplicity and Manual Labor.
The dignity of manual labor. Gandhi really elevated physical work to a position of profound respect. Standard systems often devalue the working class, right? They sometimes treat manual labor as a bottom-tier job that you should try to educate your way out of. But Gandhi broke away from that entirely. To him, working with your hands, creating something tangible that holds immense dignity, it physically builds character. There's actually a pretty famous historical anecdote about this. In Gandhi's ashrams, absolutely everyone, regardless of their social caste, their background, or how much wealth they had accumulated, had to do physical chores. We're talking farming, sweeping, even cleaning toilets. And he did this to prove a very specific point. Manual labor is not a lower class of work. It is literally the backbone of a healthy, functioning, and equal society.
Now for Section 3, Self-Reliance and Village Power.
To really understand village power under this model, we have to look at Khadi, which is hand-spun cloth. For Gandhi, this wasn't just about, making fabric. The spinning wheel, or charkha, was literally utilized as an economic weapon against British imperialism. At the time, raw cotton was taken from India, sent way off to distant industrial textile mills in Britain, and then sold back to Indians at a massive premium. But by taking up the spinning wheel and making their own clothes, villages stopped sending their money away to a distant empire. They kept the wealth locked right inside their own communities. So this incredibly simple act of spinning cloth functioned as an absolute engine for rural job creation and deep, deep independence.
And this forms the backbone of what is known as Gandhi's Constructive Programme. Think of it like a domino effect. It starts with individual labor, like spinning that khadi. Then, that localized individual action directly feeds into the second step, securing the village economy and making it self-reliant. And when you have thousands of villages operating this way, it scales up to the final step, which is national social upliftment. It's basically the ultimate bottom-up approach to building a country. You don't fix the nation by dropping policies from a tower at the top down. You fix it by empowering the individual worker and the local village first, and letting that stability radiate outward.
Let's transition to Section 4, Wealth as a Trust.
Here, Gandhi introduces a truly radical concept known as trusteeship, and this is where his philosophy makes a massive departure from standard capitalism. Trusteeship means that wealth is simply not meant for personal gain. If you're someone who's amassed great wealth, inherited vast lands, or built a huge enterprise, well, Gandhi argued that you don't truly own that wealth just for your own personal luxury. Actually, you're merely a trustee of it. Your moral obligation is to act as a steward or a manager of those assets for the explicit upliftment of everyone else in society. It completely flips the idea of private plunder on its head and replaces it with this heavy moral responsibility.
Now, for a system like trusteeship to actually survive, without just collapsing right back into greed, it demands some very specific, non-negotiable values. These are social justice and equality for all, decentralized village-level power, and strict nonviolence with zero exploitation. Notice the beautifully closed ethical loop here? If power and wealth are decentralized to the village level, it naturally prevents massive, unfair monopolies. Furthermore, if an economy operates on strict nonviolence, it means zero economic exploitation. You simply cannot exploit a factory worker or a farmer if your core operating principle is genuine nonviolence. The ethics literally enforce the economics.
Which brings us to our final section. Section 5, Relevance in Today's World.
It's pretty easy to look at a guy with a spinning wheel from the early 20th century and just dismiss these ideas as quaint historical artifacts, right? But actually, Gandhi was essentially a pioneer of sustainability, decades before the modern environmental movement even existed. His economic demand to limit wants wasn't just some spiritual flex. It was a highly practical, forward-thinking way to prevent us from stripping the earth of its vital resources. He inherently understood that the planet could provide for human need, but it would inevitably be destroyed by human greed.
When we look at the massive global crises we are currently facing today, things like severe climate change, dangerous resource depletion, and extreme, destabilizing wealth inequality, Gandhi's model stops looking like a history lesson and starts looking like a blueprint. These are, without a doubt, the biggest challenges of our time, and the standard economic engines of profit and endless consumption are really struggling to solve them. Gandhi's ethics-based model, which champions true sustainability, highly localized economies, and viewing wealth as a moral trust, well, it offers a highly viable alternative to our current trajectory. An economy built on moral limits might just be the exact paradigm shift we need to save our resources and ultimately save ourselves.
So, we arrive at the ultimate question: profit or people? The standard model tells us we often have to choose, usually sacrificing humanity and the environment at the altar of endless, quarter-over-quarter growth. But Gandhian economic thought proves that a viable, incredibly structured ethical alternative does exist, one that completely centers human dignity, local power, and true sustainability. The question isn't whether a better system is possible. The real question is, are we brave enough to build it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the ideas that shape our world. See you next time.